Apple going back and forth with Amazon for second highest valuation as Microsoft is still now in the top spot. To tech analyst John Meyer on if Apple's best days are behind it. John, first of all, Morgan Stanley came out with his report that the iPhone sales are slipping. And even though Apple is not reporting unit sales, how does Morgan Stanley get their hands on these?
So what's interesting about Morgan Stanley's data is that they're going after the more smaller companies that Apple actually uses as suppliers. So one of the biggest pieces of news right now in the last 24 hours is that Apple's main source for the camera in the iPhone is reporting upwards of a 30% expectation in decline of revenue. And so the only reason that would be the case is essentially due to Apple pretty drastically decreasing what they expect to be ordering from them for iPhone cameras.
I see. Well, there's no question that Microsoft is now the top dog in terms of market cap, in terms of valuation. Amazon is vying for second place, back and forth with Apple. But I'm just wondering if that indicates anything about management of these companies. Are Microsoft and Amazon better managed right now than Apple?
So I think what's interesting about Microsoft and Amazon right now is that the majority of their revenue is coming from software. And a lot of that is driven by AI, which is something where Apple has struggled immensely with. You hear horror stories about how bad, even this many years later, Siri can be compared to some of the other competitors that Google and, let's say, Amazon Alexa has. And so that is a small example of what I think is a larger picture of Apple remaining to lag behind in AI, where Amazon is now launching cashierless stores where the entire store, you don't even interact with a person. And that's all driven by artificial intelligence and advanced software that actually is able to recognize what humans are doing at a very, very advanced level. But where Apple, I think, can be saved in terms of their growth, it's not going to happen in the short term.
Right.
Apple is going to still lose in the short term, I believe. But where they can be saved is in the longer term, and I think this is 2020 or 2021. Ultimately, it's going to be all about the next major computing paradigm, which is what is next after the smartphone. And what I am a strong believer of is that for Apple, that is entering the augmented reality space, where we will actually be seeing glasses that we put on that have a wonderful user experience, is a step miles beyond where Google Glass ever was. And that's where I think Apple will see that longer-term growth. But it's not going to be for another few years.
You know, it's scary enough to see people walking down the street staring at their iPhones in their hand, but let alone to think of them wearing glasses from which they're getting augmented reality. That scares the heck out of me. But why do you think Apple could be a front runner there where others are clearly, I'm sure Amazon and the others are looking at it, right?
Sure. So I had the privilege of being one of the first 1,000 or so developers for the iPhone when it came out in 2008 with the App Store. And the reason why Apple have seen so much of this growth over the last 10 years is due to what they've done in terms of a simple user experience and the mobile app ecosystem, as well as building hardware that people actually want to wear, hence the Apple Watch. And so those are Apple's strengths. It's all about ease of use and elegant hardware. And I think they're the best company in the early 2020s to put those strengths to really their benefit. And what part of the larger conversation in the sort of Silicon Valley area right now is, it's certainly long term, but it is definitely around the idea that AR and VR are the next main computing paradigms, and there will be a time in 10 years where I can guarantee we will barely be using our smartphones because we'll be doing most of our work through this technology.
Is Apple right now getting distracted by this focus on the future and not looking carefully enough at what's happening with the iPhones? Is there a danger of that?
I think there is. Apple has very close-knit, distinct teams. Most of these teams do not even communicate with each other, and so the team that works on the iPhone has really no idea what new developments are being worked on in Apple. So what's interesting is when you look at the executive levels, you look at folks like Tim Cook, Craig Federighi, who leads all their software, what they are likely talking about in their weekly executive meetings is how do we minimize the damage of essentially being at the peak of our growth right now with the current offerings, and obviously their main offering is the iPhone, given how much of a share of their revenue comes from the iPhone. But what they have to be talking about is what comes after the iPhone, because at this point we've seen really the peak of that revenue growth, and so it has to be high profit margin as well. So you're not going to get that with something like the Apple Watch. It's going to have to be something that everybody wants,
well,
that is so simple,
reality.
so elegant that everybody wants. And I think really that is going to end up being some sort of wearable glasses of some sort in the next 5 years max.
The wave of the
otherwise,
future.
Apple's going to continue to see declines.
John, thank you very much for being here. Fascinating stuff. Appreciate it. John Meyer.